Greetings. My name is Letitia Hensley, and I'm the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools Director of Family and Community Engagement. We are excited that you are joining us today and know you will gain great insight from this session. At the conclusion of today's session, please provide feedback so that we can continue to support you with amazing sessions that will be provided throughout the year. Now, without further ado, we'll turn it over to our presenters.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is 12 o'clock here on this nice snowy Thursday afternoon. And so we are here to talk to you today about the love of math, helping every student succeed and making sure we know that we are all math people. And you'll see a lot more on that later on. So you'll see that a couple of things to help you engage with the session. If you need translation support, please go to the top right corner of the webinar screen. You'll see captions, show live captions, and you can switch your language from the drop-down menu. So leave that up there for another couple seconds in case anybody's going there. Okay. And also to engage with our session, we love questions. Please ask questions throughout the session. There's a Q&A box near the top of the screen. So if you click on that, you'll be able to type your question to us, and at the end, we'll come back and answer. We also might be able to type some responses during the session too. So you can also share reactions during the session. So if there's something that you really love hearing, give us a heart. Or if there's something that surprises you, give us one of those. Okay, and now we can get started. Oh, also, we do want to hear some feedback. So if you fill this survey out, you're entered to win a $100 gift card. I might fill it out too at the end. I want a $100 gift card. So so please make sure you give us some feedback for this session. We'll show you this bit.ly at the end also. So there's our team. We are the CMS Middle School Math Curriculum Specialists. My name is Rob Leichner, and my colleagues on the call are.
You have Amanda Thompson, one of the middle school curriculum specialists.
Michael Pillsbury, also one of the middle school math curriculum specialists.
And Jamila Brown is also on our team. She couldn't be with us today for the call. So there's what we're going to do today. We're going to start with our opening, then we're going to talk about math mindsets, making sure that we really understand that we are all math people in CMS. We'll show you kind of how the new math isn't really new math, talk about the standards, curriculum, what your kids are actually doing in class, and then share some resources to help. We always have some working agreements whenever we do a session with teachers, with school leaders, even with students, to make sure that we can all learn the best we can. So take a look over these. I'll talk about a couple of them in a minute. So a couple of things that are really important to us are, can you go back one slide real quick? Sorry. A couple things that are really important to us are the equitable, student-centered coaching and language that we use. One thing you'll notice, we don't talk about low kids. We don't have low kids in CMS. My two daughters are CMS, and if they were called a low kid, I'd be pretty hurt. We have students that are still learning, students that are engaging, students that might be lacking in some prerequisite concepts, but we don't have any low kids in CMS. We're all math people. Another thing is to expect and accept non-closure. Unfortunately, we can't tell you everything there is to know about math in an hour. Shocker. But please continue to stay engaged with us. Feel free to ask us questions. Feel free to contact your schools with questions. We definitely want you to be partners in your students' education and in math for, honestly, for the rest of your lives. So, and that's what's going to help us make sure that CMS helps our students realize their endless possibilities. So you might have heard that CMS, we have goals and guardrails to make sure that all of our students can succeed and be prepared for the next phase of their lives. The main one that we're focusing on today in here is goal 2, which talks about college and career readiness based on math. So making sure that all students are prepared in Math 1 to be college and career ready. And 6th through 8th graders ultimately become Math 1 students at whatever level they take it. So we got to make sure they're prepared with their middle school math foundation to succeed in Math 1 and well beyond. And within that, some really important guardrails. So as we're making sure that all of our students are prepared to succeed, we're going to make sure that every student is treated equitably throughout our district to have what they need to succeed. Every student's going to have a high-level curriculum. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. Again, to make sure that they have what they need to succeed, both with the math standards, with their critical thinking skills, and we're going to make sure that they're treated in a way that will honor their social emotional learning and make sure that they're feeling comfortable and safe in our classrooms. And you're about to see some of that now. So first, and I know that we're not in a position here where we can really have a back and forth and hear responses, but I just want you to think for a minute. What do you remember about your math experience in school? Is there a teacher that stands out to you? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your overall math experience? Okay, so now that you've got that in your mind, kind of thinking back to your experience, we're going to watch a video about some of the research around math. And what I want you to think about as you watch this video is what's the main idea, the most important idea from the video, and how will you get that idea across to the students in your life? Roll the tape.
You may have been told or led to believe that some people are math people and some aren't, or that math isn't for you. Well, it turns out that's not true. Everyone is born with the innate ability to do well in math, and whether you do well or not comes from the experiences you've had and the beliefs that you hold.
Everyone can do really well in math.
There may be some people, you know, who seem naturally good at math or just love it when you don't. But that has come about because of experiences they have had. Anyone can get to the highest level of math in school.
There's no such thing as a math person or the idea that some people are math people. Everyone is a math person.
Let's look at the brain evidence. Scientists now know that experiences grow your brain, and the brain is so plastic that it can rewire itself and grow in a really short space of time.
This is how learning works. When you learn something, a synapse fires in your brain. It's like an electric current. And the pathways formed by the synapse are like water in the sand. The more you return to an idea, the stronger the pathway gets. If you don't go back to it, it will wash away. When you learn something, your brain grows, and if you learn it deeply, it grows and stays. So you may think some people are just brainy or smart because they just are, but it all comes from what they've learned. And
you can catch up to them.
When you learn, synapses fire. And this doesn't just happen when you're in a class. It can happen when you read, when you build something, when you have a conversation, when you get an idea, and when you make a mistake. Synapses are firing in your brain every day.
The brain is like a muscle. The more you work the muscle, the more it grows, just like in the gym.
If weightlifters exercise with the same size weights, they wouldn't grow muscles, and they have to keep increasing the weights. It's the same with math. The harder you think, the more you struggle with an idea, the more your brain grows.
Here is some of the evidence that has stunned scientists in recent years and made them realize that everyone's brains can grow and change at any time.
Taxi drivers in London have to learn 20,000 streets and 25,000 landmarks in London before they become qualified. They study for 2 to 4 years, and at the end of that time they take a test which is just simply called the knowledge. When they've finished their training, scientists have found that the hippocampus in their brain is bigger. And the hippocampus is the area of the brain that's specialised in acquiring and using spatial information. When they retire from being a taxi driver, their hippocampus shrinks back down, That's how flexible the brain is.
Scientists took a group of people who could not juggle and split them in half. With one group, they really encouraged them to practice, also showing them some good ways to practice.
Not surprisingly, the group that practiced learned to juggle and the other group didn't. But the practice group also had significant brain changes. They grew the seeing and movement areas of their brains, and they developed more ability.
So the brain is much more plastic than anyone ever thought. In one of the studies, a 6-week training course, when students worked on a task just for a few minutes each day, changed the structure of their brains. And we should think about that. Working on a task for a few minutes per day for 6 weeks can cause your brain to rewire and grow. If that's true, imagine what you can do for your brain over the course of a year in a math lesson.
Awesome. So think for a minute. I really wish we could have a discussion on this, but if you have more questions, please email us. We'll talk. What was the main idea there? And more importantly, how will we get that idea across to our students at home? Think for a minute before we move on. Awesome. One thing you'll notice, we always give think time a lot of times before or after videos. We do that in our classes also. It's so important for people to have the space to process in their minds, to struggle with it. Like Dr. Bowler said there, to give our synapses a chance to fire and our brains to grow before really diving in and engaging. So thank you all for doing that. We are all math people. We all have the ability to learn math. That's not just us, that's our students. And you saw the research. Anyone can learn anything. We say we're all math people because a lot of people, for some reason, think they're not. And it's just not true. Everybody can learn math. Our brains are wired to recognize patterns, to be able to learn information. And part of what we're doing in our classes is setting it up so that we can. So now let's take a look at one of the ways that can push our brains even farther that might be a little surprising to you. It's one more video. This one's a little bit shorter even, but I want you to think, what is the main idea of this video and how are we going to get this idea across to our students?
One of the most exciting things I've learned in recent years that shocks most people I meet is this. When you make a mistake in math, your brain grows. Synapses fire in your brain. In fact, your brain grows when you make a mistake, but when you get work right, no brain growth happens.
When you make a mistake, you don't need to get the right answer. You just need to struggle and think about the mistake for synapses to fire.
That is because struggle and hard thinking are times when your brain grows the most.
This is why it's important in math class to work on hard problems that encourage you to struggle and even make mistakes, as these are the most important times for your brain.
Thomas Edison is a famous inventor. Over 100 years ago, he invented the light bulb, as well as many other important things. He allowed people to have light when it was dark, when previously they only had been able to use candles.
You may think he was just smart and probably didn't have to work hard, but that isn't true. In school, his teachers told him that he was too stupid to learn anything. Maybe that encouraged him more.
But it wasn't easy inventing a light bulb. He made 1,000 mistakes, but he didn't give up. He kept trying. When a reporter asked him how it felt to fail 1,000 times, he said he wasn't failing, he was taking steps. And he created something amazing. He is well known for saying this.
Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration.
There's a lot of evidence of the importance of mistakes in life too. It turns out that what separates the more successful business people from the less successful business people is that the more successful people have made more mistakes.
It is really important to take risks and take on hard challenges. Michael Jordan is a really famous basketball player. He was a
6-time NBA champion, the NBA scoring champion 10 times, and all-time leading scorer for the Chicago Bulls. The NBA's most valuable player 5 times, and he won 2 gold medals in the Olympics. Pretty amazing. This is what he said about his playing.
I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed.
When experts have studied the difference between successful and unsuccessful business people, they have found that successful people do more of these important things. Try seemingly wild ideas.
Feel comfortable being wrong.
Are open to different experiences.
Play with ideas without judging them.
Keep going through difficulties.
Are willing to go against traditional ideas.
So now take a minute and think, either back on your experiences or experiences of your students. How are we going to get these ideas across? What was the main idea you pulled out of that video? And how are we going to get these ideas across to our students? I'll be quiet for a couple seconds to let you think.
Thank you.
So I'd be willing to bet that those of you that do not look back on your math experience in school as a positive experience, or maybe gave it a 1 or a 2, had some teachers or parents or friends respond to you in certain ways when you got problems wrong, or when you struggled with something, and maybe they made you feel like you weren't that smart, or you felt yourself like you weren't that smart, and that's just not true. Those mistakes build more dendrites in our brain than those right answers. The struggle is what really helps us learn. And if we can get that across to our students, both in school and at home, it's going to help so much. Please, if your students are struggling or if your students are getting something wrong, that's okay. Give them that space to do that and help them to be successful with it at the end. Most of your students in your classes have seen both of these videos. And our teachers use these as a basis for how they respond to students, how they are going to be teaching students. You might hear your students come home and say, I got something wrong, and that might not even be a bad thing. So just please think about that as the way we're engaging our students with math, and as the way we're thinking about their grades and thinking about their experiences in class. We want to make sure that they are learning conceptually and they're learning overall what's going to make them successful in life and in class. And being comfortable with mistakes, believing that they're math people, believing that they can learn math, understanding that we are all math people are so, so important. So now we're about to go into some of the actual instructional practices that help them do that. So Pill's going to do some math tasks with you now.
Good afternoon, everybody. I got a quick little video that I want to show you. We're going to go on the next slide.
One of the most
The way I want to set up the video that I'm about to show you is just a subtraction problem that you may, have encountered at some point. Not these exact numbers, obviously, but the situation. And the situation here was we had 102 and we were subtracting 47 from it. And if you remember way back in the day, the problem here was that we were trying to subtract the 7 from the 2 when we lined it up in that standard algorithm that we had. And so the teacher talked about borrowing. And so we were taught a procedure and how to do this problem. And that's how we've tackled it probably for the rest of our lives, for most of us. But let's look at this video that I made and kind of try to look at things a little differently. All right, so here you can see we have a standard problem, 102 minus 47, but as we were told, we can't subtract 7 from 2. This becomes a problem for us. So we were told to borrow. So in this case, borrow from the 0, and we crossed out making a 9, and we borrowed 10. So now that's 12 minus 7, which gives us the 5. So now I've got 9. Well, what do I do with that 1? Was that 1 supposed to become a 0, or is that 10? I think it's supposed to become 0. And then we do 9 minus 4 was 5. So sometimes that was a problem for people. Like if I borrow from the 0, do I have to borrow from the 1 also? And that was just confusing. What about if we rewrote this as 100 plus 0 plus 2, which is still 102? It's just called expanded notation. And then we had 40 plus 7, which is still 47. We were subtracting that. Well, we're still presented with that 2 minus 7 problem. Now we've got a 0 minus 40 problem too. But we've got 100 way over there on the left-hand side that we could possibly look at using. So this is where kind of the borrowing idea comes from. Let's look at if we did borrow from that 100 way over on the left-hand side, what might happen. So we could, I mean, it's just a lot to borrow from. So we could do that. We could take the 100, just borrow 100, bring it on over here. That's certainly going to solve that 100 minus 40 situation. But we still got the 2 minus 7. So let's borrow 10 from there. Make that a 90. That gives us that 10 plus 2, which is 12, right? So 12 minus 7 is going to give us a 5. And then 90, right? We got 90 there minus 40. That's going to give us 50. So 50 plus 55, or plus 5 gives us 55. Same answer we got on the old traditional way we've been taught. We could also look at it this way. We could just say, well, we know that we can work with integers. 2 minus 7 is negative 5. That's operations with integers. And then we have a 0 minus 40, because that 4 is actually a 40. And then the 100 is not, we're not subtracting anything from the 100. And 100 minus 40 minus 5 gives us 55. That's another way of looking at it. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that video. We're going to switch screens here just for 1 second. And let's see. So I want to show you that paper that I was working on live and talk about it for just a minute. The standard way that we did it before, you know, I want to really focus on kind of like what happened over here. We were trying to get, you know, as a teacher, we were trying to get students to kind of memorize how to do this. Like, so more importantly was memorize what mathematics you often hear called an algorithm. And so, which is a way of doing something. So the fact that we kind of like, when we got over here, this got a little confusing, right? We were borrowing from here, but how do you borrow from 0? And then like, how does that affect that? Well, if you didn't understand the place value that was going on here, what exactly you're borrowing from or how much you're borrowing, that's where the confusion came into play. But the teachers really kind of failed to explain a lot about place value. And so it's more focusing on the steps. And I think that's what may have caused people confusion, and certainly caused you maybe to not memorize things, because if you don't really understand them on a conceptual level, then you're not going to, it's not going to stick in your memory. The 2 videos that we saw from Professor Bowler were indicative of that. She was talking about memorizing something and having it, you know, what we consider smart people, because they can always draw upon that knowledge, is because they know it. And then over here, I was just showing a different way of looking at the same numbers, but kind of exemplifying or using the place value part of it to show kind of what's going on, kind of like the behind the scenes look of what we were doing over here with our algorithm. And then this one here might be for a little bit a student that proceeded has got some more grade levels underneath their belt where they actually understand operations with integers, and so they would know that 2 minus 7 is -5, right? And we could have actually done a shortcut here, and I could have just said, well, if I did 2 minus 7 equals -5, then I got 100 minus 40, which is 60, right? So I could have just done that. That would have been even a quicker step to do. There are so many ways to do this problem. I've only showed a few on here, but there's so many ways to do it. And the thing is, what the other thing that we're trying to do in our schools and in our classrooms is we're trying not to stifle the student voice or the student thinking, right? Because kids see things in different ways than we do, right? That's just natural. They're different people and they bring different things to the classroom. So if we focus on just doing things one way, then your child is sometimes they get confused, like, is my way not the right way, right? Is am I doing something wrong here? Like, I thought I was doing good. And mathematically they are doing good, but sometimes we get so focused on the way we kind of forget what's the most important aspect of it. And so these are the things that we really push, and sometimes the parents get confused, like, well, I learned it this way, so you're going to learn it this way, and this way was good enough for me, so it should be good enough for you. No one's disputing that it may have been good enough for you, but your child is different, and so the child has different learning experiences and different things, and the children's voice is just as important. And I say children, I mean student, however you want to refer. It's just as important in this process as anything. And so opening up the realm of understanding and hearing those voices, for a teacher and an educator, it's the best thing in the world. So um, take what I've shown you as me not trying to show off, like to show you different ways. It's just these are things that I've learned, and I've learned most of these from students, believe it or not. So it's not like I'm the smart one. It's like these kids that are out here are the smart ones. So it's exciting for me to share these things with other people. So all right, so we're gonna move on to the next. So I get beyond my video again. There we go. And thank you for your
So
time.
So I definitely want to thank both of my teammates for definitely showing us where we are now in math. You saw math in practice. You also learned about the culture of our math classrooms and the current experience our students are having. So I guess as a parent, I'm a parent of an 8th grader. You're thinking, well, how did we get here, right? How did we get here? So the first thing is that we have course standards. Every 10 years, the law of North Carolina says we must bring a team of educators together from across the state to determine our math standards. That is, what will our students learn while they are in each math course. In 2017 and 18, our current standards were actually adopted, and here are some key concepts on the screens that your students will learn as you look at each grade level from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. As you look at this, think to yourself, what do you notice and wonder? And here's a hint. I have highlighted some key things for you as well. I'll give you a second to process and think about those things.
Folks, while you're processing too, just want to remind you that we have questions and answers. So I just put in a response like to what Amanda's covering right now, or a question for discussion. So if you look over there, you'll see some that related back to the slides that we did. Feel free to respond to them, share your thoughts, share your ideas. We'd love to hear what you're thinking about what we're presenting, and kind of go from there. So we have added those in. Don't forget about the Q&A. Thank you.
All right. So one thing that I see when I look from sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, if you look in sixth grade, we first introduce ratios and proportions. Then you see in seventh grade, it then becomes proportional relationships and percentages. And then in eighth grade, it shows up in transformational shapes and congruency. So as you can see, this one standard builds on each other. As well as you look down in sixth grade, you look at one-step equations and expressions that goes into two-step and multi-step equations. And then in eighth grade, it goes to defining linear functions. So as you can see, there are things that build on each other, and there are some things that may not repeat per year, but there will be a skill we might need in a different grade level or a different math course. So big idea, the state tells us what to teach. But as a district, we determine how we teach that. And we, as the district, want to make sure that our math concepts are taught conceptually, equitably, and most importantly, student-centered. So let's dig deeper in what our district has chosen. So we believe that every student in CMS has the opportunity to learn math. And as my colleague says, we're all math people. So as we looked at different curriculums, we actually chose open up resource curriculum about 6 years ago. And this is truly a student-centered way to do this. As you can see on the screen, here's an example of a workbook. And hopefully you have seen a cover like this around your household with your scholar bringing home their workbook. But this curriculum definitely promotes teamwork within students. It definitely promotes math talk. It also promotes students' voice and them showing us their way to do these math problems, with of course with that teacher guided support as well. And one of the things I truly appreciate as a parent of a math student is the daily summary. So if my child came home and was like, "Mommy, I need help with math," I could look at her daily summary right in her textbook, and that would help me understand what she's doing and what she learned that day. It also has daily practice problems that reviews things we've covered before within a lesson, and also support learners as they continue to grow within their curriculum. I also love as a teacher and as an educator, it gives me support. So how can I support my multi-language learners as well as my exceptional children? And just so you know, once again, as PLs have showed us, is that we truly understand that our students learn and retain tasks through having conceptual knowledge and that discourse with their peers, as well as with us. So one of the main questions that I hear is this curriculum? Yes, I hear they're talking in class. Yes, I hear it's conceptual, but is it truly preparing them for the EOG? Well, let me go ahead and dispel that myth for you. On the screen is an actual EOG question, and then we have a practice problem from our curriculum, and we also have an actual unit test question. As you can see on the screen, these things are all aligned. As you know, as a state, we have to take an end of grade test, and if your child's in Math 1, they take an end of course test. But our goal is to make sure that our students are prepared and ready. And as you can see from one EOG question, from one practice problem, and one test question, yes, our curriculum prepares them for this, to not only succeed in class, but also succeed on the test as well. Now, what's super important is that we know that math does not just stop when the bell rings, and we know that math does not stop when your child reaches the 12th grade. And so our math classroom experiences truly prepare our students for math class, for the end of grade of tests, and of course, life throughout our math language routines as our students learn and are encouraged to collaborate with their peers as they work together to not only do math work, but also learn how to analyze things and problem solve together. On the screen are just our resources that we share with parents. As well, we have it in English as well as in the Spanish version. And then also on the screen are also some fun things you can do with your kids just to continue to support their math with the 24 math games. And then, of course, our Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library, which is an amazing partner of CMS, also offers free tutoring for our students as well. You have to, of course, reserve a time. And then on the screen is also our links to our North Carolina course of standards, as well as our Math 1. So here are the resources for you. And you can always reach out to us, but we'll definitely say reach out to your student's classroom teacher as well. As my colleague has said, we want to hear from you. And it also gives you a chance to win a $100 gift card. Who does not want to get $100 gift card?
I want
So
to.
please, of course you do, Rob. So please complete the feedback surveys and let us know how we can continue supporting you. And now we're going to take some time to dig into some questions you all have offered in the Q&A. I will read the question and I will call on a colleague to give some responses. So let's get into the questions. So one question that I see in the chat, colleagues, from Miss Valerie. Thank you, Valerie, for being on. We appreciate you. The question is, how are you going to discuss how honor classes in middle school and high school will no longer be offered? Or this just a rumor parents have been circulating? All right, Rob, what's the tea on honor classes?
Okay, so the T is, and again, being a CMS parent of a student that's in 7th grade honors math, I can tell you the honors classes will definitely be offered in middle school and high school. We have a district rubric. So what's happened, we noticed that more kids were taking higher level classes earlier than they probably should have, and actually scores were going down in those honors classes. So we do have a district rubric now that has been proven that if a student is able to meet the criteria on this rubric, they have demonstrated readiness for that next class. Like I said, everyone is a math person, and some of us are ready to access math at different times. So this rubric's going to show it. So if they meet the rubric criteria, then they will absolutely be placed in that honors math class. But yeah, honors math, I've heard the rumors too from parents at my daughter's schools, and honors math is not going away. Don't worry.
All right, Rob, thank you for spilling the tea. Are there any more questions? We're going to look in the chat. We're going to give, as educators, we also give great wait time. So we're going to wait a couple of seconds to see if there are any more questions that we need to answer from the chat.
Amanda, can I highlight one thing real quick?
Yes, of course, Rob.
Awesome. Do you mind going back to that resource slide, Pills?
Yes.
So on that slide, like if there's the slide that you were going to screenshot or take a picture of, it will be this one. Mainly for that, if you look at the top there, it's got parent and family resources aligns to our curriculum, to our middle school math curriculum. And in those resources, in English or Spanish, there are examples, like explanations, and videos that explain each of the sections of our math units. So if your student comes home and says like, oh, we learned about this, and maybe it's in a different way than you learned it, please use those resources. It'll help you understand the conceptual math, how it's being presented now, and it can really help you help your students. So those links are so important. You can ask your students' teachers for those also if you don't miss them now.
And I want to shout out to our family and community engagement team. They have dropped the links already in our Q&A. So shout out for the tech people behind the scenes that's making it happen.
Amanda,
we do have one more question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Amanda, I'd like to add, somebody commented anonymous on the video, and they said that they were encouraging them making mistakes is not a big deal. Participating, keep on trying, and not giving up makes them great leaders. So this was a comment, and it got a little love, got some little hearts there for that response. So I wanted to share that, make sure everybody saw that.
Thank you for adding that voice into the space. And so Rob, the question went back to you. So technically, Rob, a sophomore may be done with senior level math, and the district won't stop them from taking it early?
A lot of those questions are better answered by the guidance counselors at the individual schools. As far as course placement, and when you say done with math, we have a lot of options that maybe the student hadn't considered or didn't know was available. So for specific questions like that, specific situations, I would definitely talk to the guidance counselor at your school.
So I see that Molly came in. Molly, is it your turn or we're still going?
Nope, I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw there was a few extra questions that have been added to the Q&A.
Okay, well, I'm trying. So if I don't see him, you please chime in. So I see my next
Absolutely.
question is from anonymous user. All right, my child is struggling with math. The reason is because he says he does not like it. He used to love math until it started having to do more work, like as in math one. So Rob or Peels, who would like to answer that question?
I was busy cutting and pasting. Let me.
So I think a lot of it is thinking about. Remember, we are all math people. We are all capable of doing the math, but a lot of it comes back to our experiences and the responses to us doing the math. So I think as we're responding to your child, or as you're responding to your child, hopefully as your teacher responds to your child, making sure that they have that confidence to keep struggling when it gets hard. Also, maybe speaking with your teacher about the classroom your son's, was it a son? Yeah, with your son's teacher about the classroom performance. How's he doing in class? Is he engaged? What types of things does he like? So that way you can continue those at home and hopefully pointing them out to the teacher so he or she can continue them in class as well. I think a lot of it's going to come down to the experiences that that the child is having with math, and just making as many of those experiences as positive as possible is going to help.
And I'm
Yeah,
just going to piggyback on what Rob is saying. As a parent and a math educator, sometimes my child comes home and like, "Mommy, I hate math," right? And so I had to begin letting her know that math is everywhere, not just in your classrooms. So showing her as she's reading a book where math is in there, showing her where math is in when she's playing the video game or we're in the grocery store. So I had to change the idea that math was just a class, but it's all the experiences. And so I know that as a parent, you're like, I'm not thinking about that. But I promise you, there are, I call it YouTube University. There are lots of videos. And then also Open Up has that family resource that talks about how to engage with your child, with the math topics they're doing. But for me personally, I had to realize that I had to teach my child that math is not an isolated thing and that sometimes it goes beyond the numbers. So like Rob says, it's all about that classroom experience. And you talking to the educator that's teaching your class about, hey, how is my student showing up in class and how can I support them? So therefore they can have a better outlook when they go to math class every day.
So I would like to add two things. One, about loving math. So we tend not to love things that we don't understand or confuse or frustrate us. So it's easier to push it away. I think that as your as he does better, he will appreciate it more and like it more. But math one is the first real big leap. One could argue maybe eighth grade, where we're going from what we call concrete thinking to abstract thinking. And that's a process in child development where the child would actually need, like, things in their hands, or are they think of things concretely versus just like abstractly thinking about it in the mind. And so math one is really students struggle with that, so that's an understandable thing. And I think the more your son understands that, the better they'll feel about it. That, yeah, hey, this is supposed to be hard, I'm supposed to be struggling a little bit, and maybe find the little successes where that not loving will turn to love. So
Thank you, Pills and Rob. And on
Yep.
to our next question. Can you talk about division, the new way My son has all kinds of numbers he's adding up, and I struggle to make it look simpler like how I learned it. And Rob, I'm going to give this question to you.
Okay, so we could go on for hours about this. It's fascinating. What I'll say first is the new way isn't really that new. It's a different way of representing it in a way that breaks it down a little bit more than traditional long division does. Long division does still work. If that works for your son, please use it. It's actually in the 6th grade standards that students can use long division to find the quotient of numbers. What I would recommend also, if you go to, I first recommend obviously ask your teacher, ask your son's teacher. They might have some resources that can connect it. Or if you go to the Open Up Family Resources, that's a great place to check. Or honestly, I just did a quick YouTube search. This video that I just put in the Q&A section there, that'll show you side by side the traditional long division versus one of the new methods that your son might be learning, so for how they're the same and how they're going to help. So that's a great question. Thank you so much. You'll see it also with multiplication, with students using area models and boxes. You'll see it with subtraction in the new ways that they have different lines. There are lots of new ways that are very connected to the old ways, but make a lot of sense. And they're really going to, I always say, our elementary students now are going to be so much smarter than we were because of the way that they're really learning what's happening with the math.
Well, I do not see any more questions coming. I do want to say thank you to the parent and community engagement group for inviting the math team. Thank you, parents and caretakers and community members, for getting on. It's so important. One of the things that Rob sometimes says is that math is the only place in the world where we talk about problems. Well, we are not, it's not problems. It's about us being solution finders. And so there's always opportunities for us to accept the challenge to find the solution to every problem. And that's what math does. So thank you guys all for being on. Once again, here are email addresses. I will definitely say reach out to the school first and then reach out to us second. And thank you once again. And now I think I'm turning it over to Molly, I believe.
Families, thank you so much for your time and engagement today. Please complete the feedback survey at bit.ly/Family Academy feedback to be entered into the $100 raffle. We look forward to continuing to support you at next week's Lunch and Learn. Thank you so much and have a safe and warm day.